From the creators of the original Cheat Sheet Rankings, this is the Fantasy Index Podcast. Brought to you by Fantasy Index, the original and best since 1987. Now your hosts, Luke Wilson and Colt Williams.
All right, welcome everyone once again to the Fantasy Index Podcast. It is episode 6 of the 2024 season, and we've got something special for you guys here tonight. Every once in a while, the Fantasy Index, we get young talent darkens our door every now and again, and we have with us tonight we have an intern with us that we're trying out on the podcast. We want to see if this is a good fit. What was your name, sir? Isaiah, was it? Ike?
Ian the intern.
Ian the intern. Okay. Ian Allen, our new intern, is here with us. Obviously a little humor. Ian Allen joining us tonight to talk some shop with us. Obviously, preseason is well underway. We've actually only got one game left to go here. So he's stepping in here to help us kind of metabolize what has happened so far in the preseason. We're 2 games in, 1 game left to go, 3 games in for the Bears and the Texans Hall of Fame game. It's time to stop and assess where we're at on some teams relative to where we were even like a month ago. But before that, Ian, Curtis Samuel, we just came down the wire. Was it yesterday or today? He's picked up a case of the turf toe. What are your thoughts on the Bills overall, and what are your thoughts on how the Curtis Samuel injury affects the Bills?
Well, I don't think he was a guy I was going to quite pick. He wasn't in my top 60 among wide receivers. I believe Khalil Shakir is the guy there. He's their number 1 receiver. Okay. What I've seen in the first 2 preseason games makes me feel better about that. Obviously, those guys haven't played a ton, but he's caught a few balls, seems to be kind of a go-to guy, while Keon Coleman has struggled. I rewatched those games, and Keon Coleman, they've tried to go to him 3 times inside the 10-yard line, like an end zone guy, and they're 0 for 3. One of them, in the last game at Pittsburgh, that was like an alligator arm job, where he saw the guy coming up, which, I would alligator arm it too if a guy was coming up. But he's supposed to make those kind of catches. He's been underwhelming. They have a depth chart posted at their team website. He's not a starter. They've got Mac Hollins listed ahead of him as a starter, and Hollins was playing a bunch with the first unit. So, which is all just kind of wavy stuff in the background. Khalil Shakir is going to be the top guy there. I've got him high enough on my board. I believe I'm going to be drafting Khalil Shakir in most leagues. Okay. I'm thinking he's a top 30 receiver now.
Okay.
He's going 40, 45 in. A lot of people are taking Keon Coleman before him. I think it's Shakir. I'm a Shakir fan and planning on him being the 3rd or 4th receiver on my teams this year.
Okay, well that hurts my heart a little bit, as I did just take Keon in my main redraft league last weekend, but it would not surprise me at all.
You're wisely ignoring all the stuff that happens in the preseason.
We're all subject
I tend to pay too much. If you ignore what happens in the preseason, you might have taken Odell Beckham. If you get scared off by, hey, I've got a hamstring injury, I haven't practiced all summer, and I didn't practice in September, then all of a sudden you show up and you're the number 1 wide receiver in the whole league for the final 2/3 of the season. That's the value of ignoring the preseason. But yeah, to me, I don't think Coleman's going to be great. And right now, that Worthy Coleman trade, they could is not looking great right now. Could come back to bite him.
We will definitely talk some Xavier Worthy here shortly when we get to that Chiefs Lions week 2 preseason matchup. Obviously everyone knows that the second that Joe Brady relieved Ken Dorsey, as the offensive coordinator there, that switch flipped, Diggs basically disappearing act. Khalil Shakir was fantastic. Pro Football Focus had him as like one of the top 2 or 3 receivers in the league from that point on in terms of efficiency, win rate on his routes, all that advanced stats mumbo jumbo. He was good. So, and he definitely had a hype train picking up steam on him. And then, the Bills fall at least in light with Keon.
Preseason, he looks like the same guy to me. He had one catch. They were playing Pittsburgh. He had one, and then he managed to turn and get around the guy and pick up 7 yards. I see that same guy who can make guys miss and pick up extra yards in the middle of the field. He's tough. I see Tyler Lockett. It's like this is going to be a Tyler Lockett kind of guy. And I think he's a guy that when we finish this process and finalize our board, he's going to be one of those half dozen guys where it's like, take Khalil Shakir. We've watched every preseason game and analyzed every stat forward and backwards and graded all the offenses. And ultimately you get down to a half dozen guys you're trying to push guys to. And I think Shakir is going to be one of those guys.
Nice natural segue, by the way, to reminding our listeners at home, if you have not picked up the 38th annual edition of your Fantasy Football Index magazine, online PDF cheat sheets, what have you, whatever you need, whatever you always get to get ready for your drafts this season, it's time, okay? We've got 1 week of preseason football left. You are going to be officially playing catch-up if you don't have that in hand, printed out, whatever your ritual is. Toot sweet. So go on over to the fantasyindex.com/store, get in there, get your draft stuff so you don't have to worry about it. You can tick it off your list. Before we launch into the preseason, I agree. Of course, I agree with the vast majority of the rankings, and even the ones where I don't strictly agree. Like, we have a guy like 2, 3, 4 spots apart in the same tier. One guy where we're just at totally opposite ends of the spectrum, which is good. It's good to have in-house debate. Zay Flowers. So just for a second, for the people who, they didn't own Zay Flowers last year, they didn't, so maybe they've only kind of heard of him in passing. He was on their buddy's team when they played him last year, and that's the extent they know about him. Talk to the people at home about what you feel like is the case for taking Zay Flowers this year.
Now, when you look at his numbers from last year, I think you look at the second half of the year. They figured out what they were doing. That whole passing game was, it was 240. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me,
right?
But it was 240 yards a week, something like that. He was a top 10 type receiver for the second half of the season. He's their go-to guy. I think he's featured and they're going to him. I understand that Mark Andrews is back now, but this is their number one guy, and they're going to pass it a little bit better than you're thinking based on those season-long numbers where they came out running for the first half of last year like they've always done in the past.
And he was a rookie. So, I mean, it would not be the first case of a rookie receiver. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that you didn't touch a rookie receiver, period, in fantasy. So the fact that it took him, 6, 7, 8 weeks to kind of get it in gear.
Look at the game he had against Kansas City other than throwing the game away by having the dumb penalty and having the ball punched out of his hands at the goal line. But other than those two plays, he torched him pretty good. That guy's a good player. He's going 10, 15 spots at wide receiver lower than he should. He's going to be a top 15 receiver. I'm very comfortable with him. He's one of those receivers who's going to be on my team before he takes Shakir later. He's another Ian Allen guy. If we're drawing up a list of Ian Allen guys, he's on it.
I mean, I totally get the argument because everyone loves, A.J. Brown and Amon Ross St. Brown and those marquee household name type guys. They're a lot more expensive. And, if you can get that type of, air yardage domination several rounds later, I totally get the appeal. My thing is that I don't trust that they want to diversify the way that they use him. I'm concerned that they want, he's very slight. I'm worried that, especially Jim Harbaugh has been pretty unequivocal in that he wants Rashad Bateman to be a real part of this offense now. I don't know what the weirdness was with after they got Lamar Jackson under contract. They gave Odell Beckham $15 million and handed Rashad Bateman the phone book and told him to go sit in the corner, but they seem to have decided, okay, we made a mistake there. They get, Tez Walker, rookie from UNC. He's
not going to play.
He's not. Yeah, he's not going to do much. But to me, it makes me think that it telegraphs the possibility that the Ravens want to throw it deep more, and maybe they don't necessarily want it to be to Flowers. They want to keep Flowers doing what.
No, I'm not saying Flowers is a deep threat. I think he's going to be used like they used him last year. Lots of short stuff around he caught a couple of deep balls. I think he had a long touchdown against Cincinnati early in the year, had a long catch or two against Kansas City in the playoffs. He's just a good receiver. Certainly he's a lot better than their other two main receivers. It's going to be Aguilar and Bateman again. Those are just kind of accent pieces. They're not big players.
Sure.
He we're talking about something that's already happened. Just look at the last 8 games of last year. Now,
True.
I don't have my notebook here, so I can't flip it open and give you the exact stat splits, but Zay Flowers was one of the top dozen receivers over his last 8 or 10 games last year.
For
He's
sure.
going to be just fine.
No, he closed very strong. For where we are in fantasy football right now, that's what we all want, those guys who they get kind of the manufactured touches close to the line of scrimmage, kind of a, there's almost a scammy element to like the volume of receptions they get. Hey, in full PPR, that's how you win the league right there, as a guy who can get you 8-9 catches a game, even if it's only 70-75 yards. That's a big day from your wide receiver 2 or 3 for sure. So I just wanted to juxtapose the Flowers love with
let's throw down.
Hope you don't.
We'll
I hope
throw down here.
I hope you don't. X out my eyes in the Fantasy Index employee org chart. There we go. All right. So preseason action. Ian, obviously everybody that's listening wants to hear what you're thinking, wants to see what's happening through your eyes. Let's help them do that. Let's talk about, for starters, about Giants Texans. Kind of you could spin that one a couple different ways. I feel like what was your takeaway from what the Giants did?
So rough start for Daniel.
Right.
He had the bad pick 6, and actually the first pass he threw should have been intercepted and perhaps returned for a touchdown.
Yep.
But he did settle down and he was driving it downfield. I think if we look at the first year that Daboll was there, they played super conservative. Yep. They're like, hey, we're not turning the ball over. Yep. We're going to play field position. And they actually won games, got in the playoffs. They did open it up a little bit the second half of that season.
And Daniel Jones was good in fantasy in 2022. He was.
He was the number 6 quarterback in the second half of the season.
Yep.
He was mainly because he was running.
Right. Sure. Hey, we'll take
47 yards per game. Yep. Now, I don't think they're going back to ultra conservative. It's like, hey, you got to be able to throw downfield to win in this game, this league. Malik Neighbors is clearly, this guy's going to be a top 10 receiver. I'm not saying he's putting up top 10 numbers, but number 6 overall pick, he's the real deal. He's been everything they were hoping. They're not going to try and average 180 yards and avoid turnovers. They're going to take some shots, and I thought that was apparent after all the dumb interceptions. He was driving it downfield a little bit. I think they're going to give him a chance to throw. There's going to be some turnovers. He is Daniel Jones, but Malik Neighbors is for real, and I think their other three receivers are pretty good.
True.
Darius Slayton on a per play basis is a top 5 receiver over the last 5 years.
Yep.
Which seems weird, but
it is.
He's a good deep threat. Wan'Dale Robinson, haven't seen as much from him, and then Hyatt had a couple of. They've got some guys. They're going to be throwing it around a little bit.
You make a good point. If you want to try to characterize what was the Giants' mindset with this draft, they let Saquon Barkley walk. They go get Malik Neighbors. I mean, I think you could say that they're saying, all right, Dan, enough's enough. Either be the quarterback or don't, because you're out of time. It's been 6 years. Other quarterbacks were taken 3 years later than you, already burned out, and you're still here. So we want to know if you're the guy or not. Here's Malik Neighbors. Show us what you can do. So looking at it that way, Darius Slayton as your wide receiver 1, that's no good. He's a fine enough player, but he's more of a Robin than a Batman. Let's be real. But with Malik Neighbors to tractor beam coverage attention away from him, that looks a lot more respectable. Wan'Dale Robinson as, an underneath,
He's
check down.
A little slot guy.
Exactly.
And they're fine. I'm not saying anybody should be drafting any of those other guys. This is going to be, and I'm not trying to have it both ways. I believe this is going to be a bottom 5 offense.
Okay.
And
I agree with you.
The guys that I kind of like, I like the Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah.
They took him in the 5th round, and just based on those 5 carries in that first preseason game. Now he's hurt now. We're not going to see him again until September, but it's like, oh yeah, that guy does kind of look like a running back. They got Devin Singletary is playing, and then they got these 2 other guys. Eric Gray? I think Tyrone Tracy looks like, I think I would rather have cheap Tyrone Tracy and Eric Gray than committing a bunch of money to Saquon Barkley. They may come out ahead on that.
Certainly
they got those three guys, and they're paying them less than half as much as Barkley.
Sure. Certainly for where they're at, it was the right call. No, Saquon wanted to go. He wanted to go home. He grew up 90 minutes from Philadelphia, so that it was time. All right, so, and I agree with you. Like both can be true. The Giants can be better and still not be a top 25 offense, and I think that's probably what's going to happen. I don't think that. I think after 2024, Daniel Jones, the Giants will have their answer. They'll know he's not the guy, and they're going to look to move on. But he might at least make it 17 games, and that alone, knowing that there's a possibility he will make it through the season as a starter, not need to be benched. I'm with you. I'm not going to say take Malik Neighbors at his current price, which is off the charts.
Here's a hot take for you.
Hit us. What do you got?
Daniel Jones, given his, and I'm not taking Daniel Jones. He's like 27 or whatever on my quarterback board, but Daniel Jones with his running ability, and he had a scramble in this game. I thought he moved fine. He's not gonna average 47 rushing yards per game, but he's gonna run some.
Oh sure.
He might finish with better quarterbacking numbers than the other New York quarterback, with both guys staying healthy.
Ian, you come with that kind of spice, you got to put a disclaimer. I love it.
Aaron Rodgers was an MVP.
Sure.
3 or 4 of them, but he doesn't run at all.
Nope. How much do the Jets?
Daniel, so I think I'm saying fantasy points.
Right.
I think Daniel Jones might average. In fact, on my board, I've got him averaging more fantasy points per week than Aaron Rodgers right now, who I see as one of those. I don't know where the ADP is. I don't really care what all you guys are saying Aaron Rodgers is going to do. It's like, he's not a guy you should be drafting, even as your second quarterback, in my opinion.
If you're going to completely sacrifice rushing value add from your quarterback, it's got to be Stroud, Mahomes type passing production. That's just the way it is. And there's just no path for that for Aaron Rodgers. The Jets don't want to throw. They want to get a lead of 7 or 10 points and take the air out of the football and just salt the game away. They do not want to get into any sort of slugfest with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. That's not going to end well for them. So no, I love it.
He's not a 260 plus passing yards per game. I think he was at 224 his last year in Green Bay.
I think he had like one season over 4,200 yards passing since like 2016 or something like that. 2017. It's just not necessary.
Anyway, wanted to throw that one in there.
We're going to go viral. We're going to be trending on Twitter with that one. That was fantastic. All right, so just real quick.
I could see the headline on YouTube. Jackass says Daniel Jones will outperform Aaron Rodgers.
Respected fantasy expert throws reputation away! ! All right, just real quick. The Falcons, I think the Falcons have been snapping up defensive help. They get Matthew Judon from the Patriots for like a 3rd-round pick. My gut, I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like the Falcons offense has walked the dog on the Falcons defense in camp so like from the get-go so hard that they were like, we got to get some defensive help because Kirk Cousins is just embarrassing our very expensive defense. What is your take on what the Falcons are doing here, bringing in Kirk Cousins, bringing in Sean McVay disciple Zach Robinson to run the offense? Do you think this is going to work?
Well, it's annoying, speaking of Sean McVay, that the Falcons are going that model. Hey, we're not playing anybody in the preseason. I would like to see Kyle Pitts. Can he play? Can this guy be a top 5 tight end? But there's really nothing to go on. I think I've got him at 9 or so at tight end. He's just a stab in the dark. Now, the guys that I like there, it is the up-and-coming team. I think they're going to win the NFC South. Bijan Robinson is he's number 2 running back on my board, and that's really, we may be wondering why didn't we put him ahead of McCaffrey. He's a lot younger. He's also a run-catch guy. He's healthy, but he sure looks good. I like the idea of taking him with one of those first couple of picks. And then Drake London in that offense, assuming that Zach Robinson has got some of that, Zach Taylor, Kevin O'Connell type stuff where has that ability to draw him up. He's going to be that featured guy who's going to be having a lot of balls sent his way. I would, I get a lot of grief from guys complaining where we have A.J. Brown ranked, but I could see Drake London outperforming A.J. Brown and being, 8, 9. Yeah, this is a real nice receiver.
He came in very young. This is a guy who went ahead of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, folks, and not for nothing. Okay, whatever. A lot of guys have said it. I'm going to reiterate it. You can't understate how bad the Arthur Smith era was offensively in Atlanta. It warps your mind. It warps your understanding of who Drake London and Kyle Pitts, the players, actually are. So no, I agree. I'm pretty bullish on the whole thing. I think you're right. I think the Falcons, they're not quite running unopposed in the South, but it could wind up looking that way in December.
And then the one other guy, Darnell Mooney, when we're getting late, I've got him in the 50s, low 50s. He could be my last receiver I draft, hitting on a thing once in a while. He should be rostered. I'm not banging the drum for him like I am with Shakir and Zay Flowers, but we'll see what's happening late in drafts and whether we want to add another player at that position. He is somewhere in the low 50s, 55 or so.
For sure.
I think he can maybe play a little bit. Now we've got the right offense, the right quarterback.
Our own Ben, Blackout Ben, who runs the Fantasy Index Blackout for us, big Mooney believer. So you're singing his song. He'll appreciate that, Ian. All right, so just touching on what's going on in Chicago here real quick. They look great in their first 2 preseason games. They come out, they put it on the Bills, whatever, it's preseason. They do the same thing against the Bengals. And
well, hold on.
Sorry. Go ahead.
They're playing their starters. The Bengals are playing their backups, and they start the game with three and out. So, I mean, I wouldn't say they're putting it on the Bengals.
You're right.
You try and slip a phony by me, I'm going to call you on it. But I will say this. In both of the games, there were multiple plays where you see Caleb Williams, and it's like, oh, yeah, he's a quarterback. This is not Justin Fields. This is not Mitch Trubisky. This guy is going to be a top 10 quarterback. I like that in both games. He had a well-timed run.
Yep.
Yeah, he's scrambling around. He's keeping his eyes downfield, and then he's timing them out well to run, and he's getting down. He's not getting hit. So he's definitely a number 2 quarterback, an above-average number 2 quarterback in a typical draft. One of those guys where he may develop into, oh, yeah, this is a starter. This guy's going to start a bunch of games for me. I like him. I would welcome him on my roster in a typical kind of 12 team. Not as my number 1 guy, but you carry multiple quarterbacks, and I like the look of him.
I would even go so far as to say that if the guys that I prefer to get, Anthony Richardson, Jordan Love, a couple other guys, if they just get away from me on the board, I'm not going to be sweating if Caleb is my number 1 in like a situation where I went discount quarterback. Yeah, he keeps his base glued to the ground. He's always ready to throw it. Like even when he's moving around, and it doesn't matter if he's moving to his left, his right. He looks to me to be equally strong moving in either direction. Is he going to take some dumb sacks? Of course. The Bears have an okay offensive line. It's not great, and he's gonna be trying to run around back there trying to play hero ball and eat some sacks. But he's also going to hit some crazy improvised plays with these receivers. Yeah, I'm all the way in. While we're on the subject of the Bengals, T. Higgins looks good. He's in camp, so that we'll take that. Andre Yeshivas versus Jermaine Burton. If you had to guess, who's gonna have more receptions for the Bengals out of the slot?
That is one of the big compelling battles of camp.
Yep.
I've written on it a couple of times on the website.
Yep.
I think Burton looks like he's going to be a great outside receiver. They're not going to have Higgins next year. And when Higgins is gone, they're going to plug him in, and he's going to be a good long ball guy outside. I think the guy from Princeton, from Punahou High School in Honolulu, how is his last name pronounced?
So I actually did not check.
Yosivas?
I've been saying Yeshivas, but I'm sure I'm not quite right.
Andre. Now,
yeah.
He has been there for a year.
Right.
He's been there for a year. He's had supposedly there's a comfort level. I think he's going to post better numbers this year.
Yeah.
And that now where does that, well, it's fun to debate that. We're talking, Darnell Mooney is still there. Are we putting him ahead of Darnell Mooney? Probably not. But, things happen. What happens when Higgins misses 4 weeks this year, or the Chase remains unsigned? Stuff is going to happen. So I like the look of both those guys for different reasons, and I don't think I'm drafting either one of them.
Yeah, no, they're kind of off the radar in redraft. But yeah, T. Higgins gets one of those cranky hamstrings, as he's been known to do. Jamar Chase misses time. Then we care very much. I agree. Like 2024, Yeshivas has the inside lane, but beyond, it could be Burton. So, yeah, no, I agree with you there. All right, so we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. Lions Chiefs, obviously, you get the behind the pack throw from Mahomes, and that's great fun. And we get a lot of fresh Xavier Worthy hype. He hits a long touchdown where he's running like the defense is standing still. And I mean, I gotta admit, it's impressive when it's the Lions reserves. This is still NFL talent or fringe NFL talent. When you're running by those guys like they're standing still, it's impressive. So talk to me a little bit about, I mean, obviously there's people that are for, there are people that are against this Worthy kid. He's undersized.
Who's against him?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of people who say, you put press coverage on him, he's going to disappear real fast. So I see it both ways. What do you think?
Andy Richardson wrote up the Kansas City game. Okay, now what I got sent into me was like, oh yeah, Xavier Worthy, he's the guy. Got to move him way up. He's lights out. I queued that up and watched. I had some dead time, and I'd actually watched it before I read what he wrote up on it. I didn't see it that way. I saw Mahomes pass to him 5 times. First time he passed to him, they're trying to connect with him on the sideline. He's not open. He threw it out of bounds. The second ball, Worthy jumped off sides, and that may have impacted the defense not covering him, and he catches the 39-yard ball. So he was offsides. He was as offsides as Kadarius Toney on that thing. It was an error and a demerit. So I mean, so it was good that he caught a 39-yard ball, and bad that he messed up the snap count. He was offsides, got away with one. I can't remember ever seeing a guy get away with an offsides that blatant before in a game. Okay, third play, they go long to him again. On this one, guys with him, he's smothered, no chance, incomplete. Guys playing against Xavier Worthy, they know he's fast, all right?
Right. Of course.
So he's right on him, nothing happening. Then there's later where they tried to get together in the end zone, and he's completely smothered and has there's no play on the ball. And then they have the third down in the red zone crossing route. And Andy and I debated. I considered it a drop. It hit him in the hand, and he didn't catch it. Now, the defender did put his hand on his bicep as the ball was going across. So anyway, and one other play, he got the end around, which was kind of cool in that, he picked up, 15, 16 yards, an indication that, hey, we'll probably use him on end arounds during the season. But he did fumble at the end of the thing. So we got him 1 out of 5, a fumble, and offsides, right, not open on 3 of the things. So I was encouraged that they were making an effort to use him, which indicates to me, hey, when we're playing, we will try and use this guy some, but
sure.
I didn't move him up as much as other folks did. I don't see him as the secret sauce. So one other thing, as long as we got his file out, they do have him listed as their first team punt returner. So if you want to talk yourself into drafting Worthy, you could figure, I'll bet that sometime in the 17 weeks he's going to take one back and get that extra bonus punt return. Sure. I would think it's probably, 50-50 that happens maybe. I'm not as eager to hop in on the hype train on these guys. I'm a little more skeptical naturally. Watched a lot of preseason games in the last 35 years. And I'm a skeptical guy. So he's fine, but I'm not banging the gut. Rashee Rice is the big body who's catching the stuff between in the middle of the field. And then when they get Hollywood Brown back in week 2, he might be better than Worthy.
At least more ready. And you tell me if you feel like I'm in the vicinity here for where I'm at with the Chiefs, because I had a lot of Rashee Rice last year, and it was nice. But early on in the season last year, the Chiefs were getting into desperation mode. They were panicking because none of their receivers could create enough separation for Mahomes to do anything more than 8, 10, 12 yards downfield, if that. And Travis Kelce is still a great player, but deep threat he ain't. And of course, Rashee Rice comes on in like the Vegas game in week 9 or whatever it was, and he gives them something down the stretch, which that matters to NFL teams. Like when a player steps up for them and helps them make a Super Bowl run, they remember that. That doesn't just go out the window because some track star from Texas shows up. So where I'm at with it was they needed some sort of real vertical threat because Marquez Valdez-Scantling ain't it. They needed a real presence outside to keep defenses honest so that Kelce and, Rashee Rice could have more room to operate kind of in like the Jared Goff, Detroit Lions range of the field, nipping at the edges of zone defenses, which rule the roost in the NFL landscape right now. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, that was the goal of the offseason. Hey, we got to pass downfield. There was too much short stuff last year. You caught me without my notebook in front of me, or I'd flip it open and tell you about the yards per attempt and yards per completions and how they compared with, they were terrible. They added a couple of guys. They got Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy can hit some long plays. There will be a few of those. It'd be tough to harness onto like, okay, hey, they're playing Denver this week. I want this guy to be my starter. It's going to be one of those things where he's been down for a couple of weeks and then he hits something and then you put him in and then you get nothing. And he's fine. He should be rostered. But
of course,
like Khalil Shakir versus those guys, just not even a conversation.
Especially at the price. Yeah.
I mean Shakir. I've taken him before Worthy, but I think Worthy will go before Shakir in most drafts because there'll be some Andy Richardson type guy who's hopping in on Xavier Worthy, and I'm going to take a Khalil Shakir and be laughing all the way to the bank. We'll find out if Andy's listening to the podcast.
Andy, if you're listening, I didn't know it was going to be this bad. I'm sorry. I'm not complicit in all the strays you're catching, buddy. All right. So, and hey, I mean, there's a lot of smart people that like Worthy too. So, we'll just have to see. I mean, maybe he's really good. That's the thing is like, if he is just ready to be a superstar, the Chiefs are ready for him to do it. But at his size, like you said, these are NFL defenses. They're not just going to, roll over and die for him. They're going to bracket him. They're going to do all the stuff that they do to Tyreek Hill to try and slow him down. Tyreek Hill can beat it. He's Tyreek Hill. I'm not going to assume that Xavier Worthy is Tyreek Hill.
Well, this guy is not a number one guy, so that's
certainly not.
They got another guy just like him, so it's kind of based on who are they keying on, and they'll sneak up for some stuff. Now, Andy Reid had a guy very similar to him in Philadelphia, Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson had a great rookie season, and I think 960 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns or something like that. So he had a decent first year. I mean, they're going to do some good stuff, and the game is not as physical now as it was at that time. They don't let you destroy people going across the middle anymore.
True.
So the guy will do some. He should be drafted. Yeah, there's no way you take him before Khalil Shakir. So that.
No, I agree.
Now I'm not even. He's not going to be on my team because I would always take Khalil Shakir, and he's he's not going to be there where I would take him. So I'm not losing any sleep over him.
Right. Yeah, no, but he's on people's minds. So that's where we're at with it, folks. All right, so you mentioned Denver. You could argue that no player has moved their needle, whatever, their NFL outlook more than Bo Nix has in just 2 preseason games for Denver. What do you think about what you have seen? I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you think that Bo Nix is probably going to start most of the games for the Denver Broncos in 2024. But more than that, how is this changing what you see for the Denver offense this season, if at all?
Well, that's the offense that's changed the most in the last month because I've completely gutted and reworked my draft board.
Yeah.
I can't tell you guys all of the changes because we want to tease you into buying our cheat sheet product, but I think he's going to be better than Russell Wilson. He's getting rid of the ball quick. He can run the offense. He fits Sean Payton's style of ball. So I think Russell Wilson averaged 204 passing yards last year. I could see Nix going 20 yards above that. And they've got this thing where Sean Payton uses the pass effectively in the red zone. So last year, I think they were 28 touchdown passes and 28 touchdown passes, 8 rushing touchdowns. And the same as last year in New Orleans, same sort of deal. So they could be getting a lot of little cheap. So I've got Nix as a number 2 quarterback. So he's in there. I'm considering him, weighing him against guys like Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield. I might take him before those guys. He runs a little bit too.
He does. He's got.
He looks good. Now, what's weird about the team is that all of the positions have been thrown up in the air. Yeah. I didn't think Tim Patrick was going to make the team. He's missed the last 2 years with ACL and Achilles injuries. He's 30. He's slow, but he's been listed as a starter all along. He's been playing with the first unit offense every snap of the preseason games, and he looks like he can kind of settle into open spots in the middle of the field and catch short balls So he is, we use that barometer of Darnell Mooney. He's one of those guys who's now north of the Mooney line. Late 40s or maybe low 50s. I like him a little bit more than Darnell Mooney. Definitely rostered, although I should put with the caveat, if he's on the team. I think they're keeping him and he's starting. I haven't seen anything from Troy Franklin. He's not even out there.
Yeah.
Marvin Mims, I think, is a deep threat guy as opposed to, this guy's starting. He's out there all the time.
Kick
I think
returner,
Franklin's that kind of player also. So I like Tim Patrick. Can we say with certainty that he's not going to be better than Cortland Sutton? As awesome as Sutton was last year, I think it's a possibility.
I'm with you that it all feels possible in this Denver offense right now. In the backfield, like Javonte Williams has, he's kind of answered the call. There was a lot of murmuring and like, oh, is Javonte on the outs with Sean Payton? That's not the case anymore. Like clearly Sean Payton wants Javonte Williams to be something like his lead runner. But Audric Estime, Sean Payton likes Audric Estime. We know that.
No, I have watched all of those Denver first half things twice because it's the most interesting team of the preseason. So I watched the first half of their games twice. And I am confident that they are going to use Williams is going to start and Jaleel McLaughlin is going to be the two. It's a 1-2 punch. And I don't think they're keeping Samaje Perine. Now, Perine was their third down guy last year, caught 50 balls. Denver led the league in completions to running backs. I think they're going to catch 120, 130, 140 balls. And when you factor in the receiving, Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin they're going to outperform where they're picked.
Yep.
McLaughlin, I think, should be, and I don't spend a lot of time studying the ADP. I'll do that at some point here. But I think he should be going about 30 running backs in. And I don't know if he's going in the top 40 or the top 50 because people take a while to figure things out. And he might not be picked in the top 50. But so that's another one of those Ian Allen guys that we're talking about, late round, Jaleel McLaughlin as a depth running back. Audric Estime will make the team. I don't think he's doing much this year.
It looks like he could be a bullet.
Ensuring that Samaje Perine isn't on the roster.
Right. At his size, you assume he's going to be all right in pass pro, and it looks like he could be on the field in those situations where they just need an extra blocker because they know that the house is coming on defense. But, I like McLaughlin a lot. He can fly. Straight line speed is fine. I think he runs like around 4.4. But more than that, like, we're seeing like kind of a miniature revolution at running back where running backs are getting smaller. And McLaughlin, man, can he just find the open space so fast. Every time he touches the ball, it seems like. Yeah, the Broncos like him. I think I like
now that he's been around for a year, I think he's going to be better in the passing game. He snuck downfield for a 22-yard catch against the Colts. Now, he did have a bonehead play where it was a short-range screen that bounced off his chest, easily could have been intercepted. But I'm not getting too hung up on one play in the preseason. I think they've settled on those guys. Those are the guys.
Okay.
Audric Estime is like, okay, you practice, and someday we're going to put you in. Right now, you're not doing too much, but your time will come. He's not a guy that I'm rostering.
Right. Keep an eye on him.
We'll see what happens. But obviously, you end up being wrong on some of these guys, and it's like, oh yeah, that so was good, but not a guy I would roster. Not when there's guys like Tim Patrick, Darnell Mooney sitting out there.
For sure, absolutely. All right, so just real quick, based on what you've seen so far, and we haven't watched every single snap of every single preseason game because some teams are playing their starters, some aren't. It's a quick sidebar. What business do the Panthers feel that they have to not be putting Bryce Young into the game? Like, he hasn't played in the preseason. This is a guy who threw 12 touchdowns last year. Like, what do you do? He's not going to play.
The game changed. And I wrote up something for this that's going to be on the website on Saturday. And it's Sean McVay's fault. Okay. He came in and it's really pretty amazing that he came in 2017 as a 30-year-old head coach.
True.
30.
That's crazy.
And in his second year, not his first year, but his second year, he made the decision, I'm not playing anybody in the preseason. They might get hurt, and really to get a good look at these guys, it's better to hold a joint practice. It's kind of more controlled. So really the meaning, and that, so his DNA has been sent out through the league.
Yep.
All of his guys, and the general thing now is almost all teams, hey, we're just going to put guys out for a few plays, which I think is shocking that they're comfortable doing that. I mean, a lot of people pay a lot of money to see these games. Why don't you do your, those important looks that you're doing at the practice things? Why do you do them in a game? I think it's kind of a dick move, but that's the standard now. So I assume that they're playing Bryce Young a bunch in these drills. He's got the coach that helped turn around Baker Mayfield last year. Maybe something will happen, although I think they're going to be pretty bad. It's like Patriots, terrible. Panthers, I'm going to put them in the terrible bucket. Those are the only two teams where I'm sure, awful.
Fair. And yeah, that's the thing is, like, the Panthers were the worst team in the league last year. How can you be comfortable, like, not kind of digging your spurs into the sides of this of just about everybody on this roster and seeing what you've really got? Joint practice, with whatever team you're playing in the preseason that week, it's all well and good. And they even get rowdy sometimes. Obviously we have a few fights break out at those joint practices every August like clockwork. But still, like, is the preseason real? No, but it has its moments. It has its moments of realness. 2-minute drill, 4-minute drill, all that stuff. And yeah, to put Bryce Young, Deontay Johnson, we've barely seen like
Deontay. Yeah, so you just have to go by what you're hearing from the practice reports. And Deontay Johnson's going to be their top guy. So it's a crappy team, but they do have a clear number one guy that they're going to be trying to work the ball to, Deontay Johnson, and that makes him another one of those guys that I'm taking before Xavier Worthy for sure.
Yeah.
Xavier Worthy goes after Deontay Johnson on my board.
I mean, best case
just
scenario.
on usage.
Right.
If you're in one of those TD only leagues like my dinosaur league that I'm in, where you're looking just touchdowns or extra points for long touchdowns, then it becomes a different conversation. But Deontay Johnson's going to catch a lot more balls than Xavier Worthy.
Xavier Worthy, best case scenario, 90 targets. Like, I just don't see a path much higher than that. Deontay Johnson's going to see 140 targets. I mean, that's the stars are really aligning for that. So yeah, any sort of PPR format, Deontay Johnson should definitely be on folks' radars. Okay, just to kind of wrap up here, Ian, looking at the landscape, looking at what we've seen so far in the preseason, what you've seen, what's an offense or two that, based on what you've seen, what you're hearing, what you're picking up over the last 2 months, you're kind of getting more optimistic about the whole ecosystem for that team's offense right before peak draft season?
Well, I think my key good offense in the top group is I like the Bengals. Joe Burrow passed all those guys. I've got the Bengals right up there with the 49ers and the Chiefs and the Lions up in that top tier of offense. I like the Bengals.
And conversely, what are there any offenses or even just like position groups on offenses where over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks you're starting to get more concerned? You're starting to really start to feel like I'm hard avoiding this player, this whole offense.
Offense that has fallen in my eyes. I'm just so optimistic with everybody.
I'm suffering from the same thing. Yeah, it's like, well, I really don't like the Giants, but other than that, I kind of am looking for reasons to like all these teams.
Okay, so I've got a couple for you. I'm nervous about the Cowboys and the Eagles. I just don't know how good those teams are.
Okay.
New coordinator for the Eagles. And the other, the Browns have steadily dropped a few spots on my board. They got the offensive line injuries. And, hey, can Deshaun Watson play football?
Right. And will he? Yeah.
Because he's not going to play in the preseason yet, so you got to kind of take him cold. They have declined on my board throughout over the last month. And I think that – and the Chargers. I guess a little nervous about Justin Herbert's foot.
Okay.
Although I guess he returned to practice today. And then, they don't really have great talent. You got Josh Palmer and Lad McConkey and DJ Shark. And I don't know that they want to put up great numbers. I think they want to win football games and beat clock.
Yep.
So I have downgraded them some. Lad McConkey was kind of my guy. Back in the spring, kind of like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be the number one receiver for the Chargers, and he's got Justin Herbert throwing to him. I saw one real good out route He didn't play in the first game. Second game, he had one where it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of a Julian Edelman type of thing, a 5-yard catch that converted 3rd and 4. But he just doesn't jump out as like, oh yeah, this guy's a baller that I've got to get on my team. He's no Khalil Shakir, and like you're going to have to take him a lot earlier than Tim Patrick.
Right?
Wouldn't we like Tim Patrick what his price point is as opposed to Ladd McConkey? I think I've still got him in my top 50 receivers. I think I got him a little bit higher than Tim Patrick, but I'm just a little nervous. I don't want to talk him up too much and then have to deal with the fallout of that.
Right. I mean, I put an article up on the website a little bit ago where Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman have some track record together. They've done this thing together before. They never went out of their way to feature any sort of rookie on offense. Certainly not at receiver. And I mean, McConkey was good at Georgia, but he was never the guy, and it was for a variety of reasons. Brock Bowers is there. He dealt with a kind of a myriad of injuries. And they didn't need him to do more than what he did for them. Yeah, I honestly, if I'm taking a receiver out of this Chargers group, for me right now, it's probably Palmer. I think Palmer could potentially. It's a contract year. He's shown some juice in the past. John Harbaugh likes vets.
When did he show some juice? What did he do? Did I miss something?
Did I miss him doing
something good?
Mike Williams goes down.
Don't fluff on me, man. I'll call you on it.
Mike Williams goes down last year.
He's Josh Palmer.
I'm not saying I'm not waiting overnight to.
In fairness, I've got him only a little bit below McConkey on my board. But let me say this about one guy that I've thrown shade at, Quentin Johnston, who I thought was a pile. And like, hey, is this guy even going to be on the team? Did run right. But let's see, who were they playing? They were playing the Rams. Okay. Or it might have been the Seahawks game, but he ran right by the guy, and it's a 60-yard touchdown, but the throw was off target. And it's like, oh, he is big and fast, but I don't think he's going to start. I think it's the Chark attack outside, and he's a spot duty guy. But he did have that one big game against Michigan where he really stuck it to Jim Harbaugh. That was his best game as a college player. The one in the Fiesta Bowl.
Right. Maybe that's why he's still on the team, is Harbaugh remembers.
TCU beat those guys. And so, I don't know. Anyway, I noticed.
Right.
One pass. I mean, this is where we're at on the preseason. We're talking about one incomplete pass. Well, let's move the guy up a little bit on our board. He had an incompletion thrown his way.
One incomplete pass is a quarter of their snaps. But he's a big guy. He was open with a better thrown ball. He would have had the opportunity to drop it. Yeah, he reminds you exactly. we could have killed him for another reason. He reminds you why he was a first rounder for sure, and how he accumulated his numbers at TCU. He wasn't some route running maven. I mean, he was just bigger and faster and could just run right by the whole field kind of at will. I don't know. I'm keeping Johnston in mind just because, again, this is a pass game.
No, I'm not saying no, I didn't say we're not drafting him.
No. I'm just if I have injury Armageddon at receiver, I'm in a deeper league, and
if there's a nuclear attack that wipes out all of the franchises east of the Mississippi, then this guy might be a guy to maybe roster.
The Greg Roman said they have a package of plays. They have a role in mind for Johnston. Now, that's probably coach speak. That's probably just, they're warming him over so that he doesn't lose all trade value. But, again, McConkey, we'll see. You just said yourself, Josh Palmer is Josh Palmer, and DJ Chark is just kind of a mercenary who goes around, running 9 routes for whoever wants to pay him $5 million, $8 million that year. So there's a lot on the table here of whatever the Chargers' 26th ranked passing game in all likelihood, but it doesn't beg or believe. It's possible that he is like a wide receiver 4 at some point in 2024. All right, well, thank you very much, Ian, for joining us and giving us a little bit of insight for where we're at in the preseason so far. How are you doing? I feel for you this time of year because I know you're just up to your eyeballs trying to keep current with everything that's coming down the pipeline. How challenging has it been to keep?
Oh, no. It's still, we're blessed to be able to spend our time, carefully watching each game and trying to make sense of it. And I mean, that's what I love to do.
True.
And I appreciate you guys picking up and doing such an outstanding job on the podcast.
For an intern, You didn't do a half bad job, I gotta say. So I appreciate you giving it the old college try. No, of course. Welcome back anytime. Hey, Colt can kick me out, and you guys can rap next time, just so we don't have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, keep me in mind as that sub guy when you got a hamstring problem with one of the guys is out. You need a filling guy.
You can be
the two-man booth is better than the three. Gets a little cluttered with three guys all
Exactly.
arguing about Khalil Shakir. But
I've got him wide receiver 48. I've got him at 51, you idiot. Okay. Yeah. All right, thanks so much for joining us and giving us a rundown of the NFL preseason tonight, Ian. We will be back with you guys next week. Colt Williams will be back in the booth for us to talk about final ADP price check on some guys that we feel are like kind of hot spots in the draft. Your Rashee Rice's, your Malik Neighbors, who we just talked about tonight. Some other guys where they're pretty divisive in terms of whether you should be taking them at market price or not. So we'll give you our final price checks on those guys, and should be a lot of fun. All right, Ian, any parting words for the Index faithful out there?
Besides Khalil Shakir, he's our guy.
Khalil Shakir season.
So get him.
Okay.
But not too early.
Right, of course.
Okay, no, seriously, thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.
Absolutely. It'll be a lot of fun. Don't stay up too late working on those rankings, though. You need your sleep.
You got it.
Right. Have a good night, bud. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back with you next week.
This has been the Fantasy Index Podcast. For more great content, premium rankings, and cheat sheets, head over to fantasyindex.com.